Welcome back, everyone. This is Akasha with the Self Illumination Podcast, and I'm so excited to share with you a wonderful conversation today with Jennifer Kittredge. She is an amazing human being. She is an embodiment guide, a women's circle facilitator. She's been married for 25 years with 3 beautiful children. And she really started her healing journey back in the fall of 2002 and feels that it's been the most expansive, beautiful, and at the same time painful thing that she has ever done. And one of the things that I really want to share with you all is that she is a former mental health therapist. And I'm super excited to have this conversation with Jennifer today about how she's bringing all of her gifts together to serve, especially when it comes to this idea of circle. So Jennifer, big welcome to you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, I have this, I'm in love with the concept and the creation of women gathering. I think there's just such power there. And as I was, Jennifer and I were talking before we hit record on this segment, and I really was thinking about this podcast all weekend. This is a Monday. And one of the things that I really believe that has happened as we are waking up from this patriarchal aspect is that we've lost this art of women gathering. And, the thing that I'm really excited, because you do have that mental health therapist background, and then you're also holding space for women to come together and support one another. I think before we even get started, I'd love for you to just kind of define like what circle is.
Yeah, so it is exactly what you said it is. It's this amazing place to bring women together and gather. But I love it because there's magic and medicine within it. And having that mental health background, I am a huge advocate for mental health, but I've noticed that when women gather in circles, the medicine that happens is so much quicker than what happens in the therapy room, because we're sharing, we're getting vulnerable, we're mirroring each other, and you don't feel so alone. So the transformation that happens, I just see it as much quicker. So it's this beautiful like magic and medicine gathering of women in a safe container where they don't feel judged, that they don't feel criticized, where they can just come and show up in their mess and just know that they're going to be held.
Oh, I love that. And I love that you said show up in their mess, because I think at any given point, every human being is their own beautiful disaster, right? Yeah. And I know, as someone who has led retreats for many years, that ability to hold space and just allow people to come as they are, right? Whether that's how they think they are, how others perceive them to be, and then everything in between, that is such powerful medicine. And it's such an alchemizing action, as a healer. I think it's just such a gift. So the thing that I would like for you to really share with people who are listening is, what did Circle do for you that made you so passionate about being a space holder of this type of gathering?
Okay, so back in March of 2020, kind of like pre-pandemic, nothing was locked down, nothing was happening. I just had this download and I was like, I want to bring women together. Like I was really missing community with other women. And so I invited like my closest friends. I think there were 4 or 5 of them that came to my house, and I put this circle together. I had no idea what I was doing. And I was just like, whatever, I'm doing it. And we did like a burn ceremony and forgiveness and all this stuff. And the general consensus was like, wow, we need more of this and it needs to be longer. So I was looking online and I took a 12-week course with Sistership Circle, a training to become a facilitator. And Tanya Lynn, who is the founder, she put me on the hot seat one day. So each woman was put on the hot seat at the end of our training and circle. And she absolutely broke me and got to the root of what was holding me back in a matter of 10 minutes. And I wept like I haven't wept ever before. And having that connection of why I was dimming my light, why I wasn't stepping into my power, why I wasn't, doing what I was put here to do on this earth, and making that connection, going back to when I was 4 years old.
Wow.
And dimming my light because I didn't want to make other people uncomfortable, because I was a big personality, and there's more to that story, and it was just this like crack open for me and this healing that happened. And I was like, oh my gosh, all women need this. All women need to have this.
Thanks for like being so candid about that, because I think sometimes when this is really something I was thinking about, because I knew we were going to be talking about women. And one of the things that I am very like, my medicine is really potent about, is that as women, we have all been programmed with a dominance of patriarchy.
Yeah.
And I love men. I got no problem with it, right? We need the balance. We need both. Yeah. The key for me is that in a feminine body, we have been repeatedly programmed to achieve the way men achieve, think the way they achieve, non-emote the way they non-emote, to hold the same type of energy as men hold, while also still being a woman.
Yes.
And that conflict for me is something that on my personal journey, I know when I get around women, what it feels like when I'm just hanging out with my girlfriends, or when I do a retreat and it happens to be all women, there is this almost collective sigh.
Yes.
And I think that it's just beautiful that, I'm a big fan of Tanya. I think she is an amazing human being, and she has brought such greatness to the world through this idea of the sistership. And I would love for you to share, if you don't mind, what it feels like to be a facilitator of bringing women together like that. Like, I've got to imagine that just fills up your cup in a way no words can say.
It really does. And I think like part of the magic of it is just because I'm the facilitator doesn't mean I can't show up in my mess. So I get to show up authentically and vulnerably. I mean, there's times I can walk in the circle and I'm like hysterically crying, and I'm like, okay, let me get it together so we can start. So I think like when people see that in me, because they're like, oh, she's leading, or I'm like, no, I'm just part of the circle. Like, yes, maybe I have the outline and the activities and rituals that we're going to do, but this is our circle. And so just being that real and transparent allows other women to do the same. So it does feel my cup. It just fills my cup in so many ways, but seeing women just open up to other women, because like you said, we are programmed, like women have been programmed to be against women for how long? Millennia.
Man, I'm so glad you brought that up. I'm going to give some snaps for that, because I literally, before this podcast, was taking a shower and I was like, oh, mental note, guys, talking to my guides. I was like, got to remember to talk about the fact that there's this whole like subversive competitive vibe.
And it's the sister wound, right?
Yeah.
It's a huge wound.
I think that's one of like Tanya's great gifts, right? Like that's what she's really kind of worked. And then everyone that has trained with her, it's something that we all come together and we realize of like, holy shit, we've been programmed
we all have it.
Not like each other so we can be controlled.
Yes. And so like uncovering it. So my two biggest wounds are sister wound and witch wound. So those are the two that I have really had to work on and heal from. But the sister wound is big for so many people. I mean, I can't tell you how many DMs I get. Like, I would really love to come to your circle, but I'm afraid to show up. I'm afraid of other women. I can't trust other women. And so it's like breaking down those barriers and those programs. Like, no, women really are safe if we open up and, are ourselves instead of having these walls up. And because once women get together in circle, it takes a minute to adjust for people to feel what's going on. But then the sharing that happens and the vulnerability, and it's that collective sigh of like, oh my gosh, I'm not alone. Like, this is amazing.
Don't you think there's a part of us that goes, oh, I remember this?
Yes. I really do. I
I
honestly
think
believe
that for
that.
myself, like I tap into that unified field. And
Yes.
when I'm in that space, that's something where I'm like, oh, this is what it means
Yeah.
to be held by the mother. I
Yeah.
remember this,
Yes.
right? And I
And
think, I would love if you don't mind talking about define a sister wound and the witch wound, if you don't mind, because I think a lot
okay.
of women suffer from that and they aren't even
Yes.
aware of it. So if you
Yes.
wouldn't mind defining those, that would be great.
Sure. So a sister wound is like being hurt by another woman, not being able to be, trust another woman. So think about like women backstabbing or talking behind your back, or I have a journaling group going on right now. And when I was in corporate, women can be vicious in the corporate world. And I realized very quickly that the corporate world is not for me, because I don't know how to play those games, and I don't want to play those games. So I came out of that pretty wounded, not liking other women because they're going after you and stepping on you to get right above. So that
Well,
would
they're
be an
doing
example of a
that
sister.
patriarchal
That
competition.
Yes, yes. So then my witch wound comes from, so I was in the church for 10 years. Yeah, 10 years. I was a leader in the church. I led Bible studies. And as I started waking up, I realized a lot of the programming from the church. And I left the church in 2012. So doing the work that I do now with, ritual and my crystals and all that, like, that it would be deemed sinful. Like I would be burned at the stake for that back in the day. So I have really had to work through that because I was afraid. I was afraid of what people would think of me doing the work that I do because of the programming from the church. And I had to release that because I'm like, no, this is what I've been put here to do. So my witch wound definitely rears its ugly head sometimes. And it's just something that I have to keep stepping through, to do the work that I do. But yes, and it's very funny because a lot of the women I attract are from the church and they come to my circle. It's like they sneak in to do circle work.
It's like your kismet client, right? Like they find
you. They do. And so I'm like, okay, so what's missing in the church that they're coming and wanting this type of community and this beauty and magic, right?
Yeah.
They're not getting it there.
I think you just really put a very fine point on that. And I'm going to come back to something that you said early in this conversation, which was you showing up in your own beautiful mess. Mm-hmm. Because that really speaks to authenticity. And I'm a big fan of like knowing your bedrock, and one of my things is authenticity, integrity, and freedom. Those are my three like anchors in the way I navigate my life and what I share with others. And I think, that is the thing in the world that is so challenging as you are continually awakening, is aligning yourself with those people who are showing up authentically. They're not just putting on the mask, whether it's the mask in church, whether it's the mask in community, whether it's the PTA mask, whether it's the HOA mask, like whatever it is.
Yes,
but
plenty of masks.
Showing up as themselves.
Yeah.
And so that brings me to one of my questions about, is that really why you started holding the circles beyond just like what you were doing with your friends? And as you started gathering more following to the circles in your area, because I think you're doing these online as well, right?
I do them virtually and then in my home as well. I open up my home and have circles.
Yeah. So I'm curious, like, as you've continued doing this, what really keeps you motivated to do it?
I think it's seeing women take off their masks because, like we said, we've been so programmed and conditioned to work from that masculine energy that when women can really start healing those feminine wounds and taking off their masks and balance, because like you said, we need a balance, right? We need that balance of masculine and feminine. So seeing them like that collective sigh, taking off the mask and healing wounds that they may not even know that have been there, right? It's just somebody says something and they're like, whoa. I had one woman, she came, I had a big event, a big circle at my home last October. She's been to one of my circles one time and she's like, that absolutely changed my life. To sit with 17 other women and she like transformed her life just from coming to one circle. She's never been to another one. She's just like gone off and and I think it was just the power of women gathering. I honestly believe that when women gather, we're going to change the world. And God knows we need to change the world.
Another one of my, I know it's funny that I keep talking about my shower thoughts, but it's like, that's usually where I'm like letting the water like cleanse my aura and everything. And so I get all these downloads in the shower, which is hilarious, but it's true. So I'm going to own it. I was thinking about, the Dalai Lama many, many years ago was quoted as saying the Western woman is going to save the world.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about, you gathering and the potency of that, and just how this really speaks to the way, we are shaping the new earth, because I think that isn't even like, macro, right, conversation to be had of the pendulum has really gone from like masculine to feminine, and we're still in this space, right? We still haven't landed in that space of really understanding the balance. And I think that is one of my favorite things about Circle, is that at no point is it speaking negatively of masculine energy.
No,
and I think
not at all.
So beautiful, right? Would you mind speaking about that a little bit?
I would. And it's funny that you bring this up, because my husband said to me, he had a friend say something about like, oh, they're in Circle man bashing. And I'm like, we don't even bring up men. We're working on ourselves the whole time, and he sees what I do and how I've changed, right? And every now and again we get in the conversation, like he's like, it would made him uncomfortable to say patriarchal programming, like men are bad, but that's not it. We're all under the patriarchal programming, men too. And so he and I have had these great conversations, like, well, you're on it, you're under it too. Like, men don't cry, men do this, right?
So we all divested of their emotions, right?
Yes, absolutely. And so Circle has provided this place for women to explore all of that, right? Because some women aren't in great relationships because of this, masculinity. And so it's like finding that beautiful balance of both of them, because we all have that feminine and masculine energy. And I think when people hear that, they're like, ugh, like, right? Like, no, ugh. But yes, we all do. It's just energy. And it's finding that beautiful balance that we all need to. So that's what I'm really working towards in women. Like, because we work so much out of our masculine, how do we bring in that feminine? How do we heal those feminine wounds so that you feel safe enough to balance the both of them?
I love that, because I just got this great image. A lot of my history, as many of the listeners might know, is from like the yoga school of philosophy. And so I always bring things back to Shiva and Shakti, which is male and female energy. Or, we could even go, if we want to use the Judeo-Christian paradigm, we could say Christ and Mary Magdalene, but it's that ultimate masculine and feminine energy, or the positive and negative charge. And I think a lot of people are really waking up to recognizing that it's the balance of the two that creates the balance in your reality, and you just really, again, put a great point on it when you said even your husband has noticed how you've changed, and it's allowed him to open up in ways that if you hadn't have taken this journey, it might not have balanced out the energy in your relationship in that way.
Right.
And I think that is just another, like side benefit of being a member of the circles, because you get to watch this lovely ripple effect through your reality.
Yeah, it's so amazing.
Well, one of the things that I really have enjoyed is, following you on Instagram. You have a card deck that you just created, and then you have this thing called the Wild Hearted Rebel.
Yes.
And, I'm obsessed with that name.
Thank you.
So it made me instantly, as soon as I saw it, it made me think of the book Women Who Run with Wolves, one of my all-time favorite books.
Yes.
And there's so many other books about being a wild woman, but it's, for me, I really, not just me, but the listeners, I want you to tell me about the Wild Hearted Revolution and what that is.
Yeah. So it's funny. I was going through Angel Sophia leadership training, right? And we were naming our movement and all that. And I'm like, gosh, what is my movement? What is my movement? And I had a sticker on my water bottle and it just said Wild Heart, Gypsy Spirit or something. And so I'm looking at it and Wild Heart of Evolution like was downloaded. And I'm like, okay, but what does it mean? And it's really this radical reclaiming of the untamed woman
Oh
because
my God,
we
I love that. Say that again.
a radical reclaiming of the untamed woman.
I'm going to write that down because
Yes,
that's going in the description, girl.
yes. So, and what that means is like, because of this programming, we've suppressed parts of ourselves, and I say these wild parts, but everybody's wild looks different. Like a wild for some people could be showing up in circle, which is something they've never done. A wild for another person could be going on an adventure by themselves it's just different for everybody to be taking a painting class. It's what have you suppressed because you have allowed society, the patriarchal society, to tell you it's wrong, right? We've been so cut off from our intuition and our dreams and nope, you have to do this, you have to go to college, you have to do this, whatever. And so I feel like that wild, like we're reclaiming those pieces of ourselves that we have allowed this programming to suppress and bury.
Oh man, I love that. And I just got like full body chills. That just resonates with me so well. Because it goes to that idea that feminine energy is chaotic.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so to be able to reclaim that wild, to step into being untamed.
Yeah.
Right. And really seeing the beauty in that allows that masculine energy to relax a little bit. It doesn't have to always be so orderly and so in control. And there doesn't have to be all this fear of what if.
Yes.
And I think this idea of embracing the wild is really going to, lead to my path here, self-illumination and initiation for your own shift of bridging the gap between your humanity and your divinity. And I believe that you just put everything in a beautiful little basket there.
Thank you.
This idea of reclaiming your wild.
Yeah.
And I love that that's something that you're inviting inside of the circle. Yeah. And what I would also love is tell people how they can how can they get your card deck? How can they work with you? How can they join a circle? Because I know you said you do them in person and online. Give us all the details about how you share your wisdom.
Yeah, so you will find me hanging out mostly on Instagram. That's where I'm most comfortable or whatever. I do a little bit on Facebook. So that is Jennifer_Kittredge. And then on my website, Wild Hearted Revolution, circles will be on there as well. But everything is on Instagram. So if you clicked on the link in my bio, my circles are there, my card deck. I just wrote a journal prompt card deck because I have journaled since middle school. And I always hear people like, I don't know what to write. I couldn't write or whatever. So I'm like, here's your card deck. Pick a card every morning and start writing. So I have actually a group I'm working through the deck with right now. We're doing 30 days of journaling with a different prompt every morning. So it's been really cool.
Awesome. And is that something you think you'll do another cycle through?
I think I'm going to. So I've recorded everything. So I think I just said this yesterday on Instagram. I think I'm going to keep that group open and just allow people to join and go through all the videos, but then also have me in there popping in, doing lives and all of that, because it's been a really fun group and to watch everybody like, oh, this one really triggered me. There was a lot of resistance here.
Yeah, and I absolutely love, I followed you for a while because I met you through one of the things that we've done together with Angel. And I love the videos that you do about this. I just love everything that you do, which is why I wanted you on the podcast, because you've got great magic. And I'm just so grateful that you're sharing it with the world. Thank you. I would love it if there's just any little nugget from Circle that you have gained in your life that you want to share with the listeners before we close it out for today.
Okay. Yeah, I think the nugget would be to step in. So last summer I was in Wyoming and I just kept hearing the word step in. And I'm like, what does that mean? And I'm like, instead of stepping, everybody's like, step out of your comfort zone or step out of this, or I'm always like, step in more to whatever it is that makes you uncomfortable, right? Like keep stepping in. And so when you step in the circle, you immediately have this community of sisterhood. I have sisters all over the world now, and I'm actually going to England in October to go on a retreat with all of my England sisters, which is going to be amazing. But yeah, like it's like this magical sisterhood and community where you can just show up, and I could call any sister right now and be like, hey, I'm having a really hard day, whatever. They'll be like, okay, let me hold space for you. What do you need? And that's the magic. So keep stepping in. And I think when I always say magic of circle, we're not there to fix anybody or giving anybody answers. We're literally just holding space, because all of your answers are within you. And you find those through circle by being quiet, and the rituals and just the connections that you make. So one of the rules of circle is like, we don't give advice, and we don't. And that's the magic.
Wow. And talk about therapeutic.
Yes.
Right. So many of us have spent our life being told what to do.
Yeah.
As opposed to going inward and listening of how to be for you, to be your best self.
Yeah.
So I love this, the potency of that message. And thank you for sharing that delicious little nugget, because what I've learned, and I hope the listeners have learned here today, is that women supporting women is really going to be what heals the world. Yeah. It's this bringing everything back into balance the way nature intended, where we have that harmony of the masculine and feminine energy. Yeah. So I want to say huge thank you to Jennifer.
Thank you.
You are just such a light, and I really love to be a part of watching you light up the world. And to my listeners, thank you guys so much for coming back. And as always, stay illuminated.